I am the heir of the Wang family in a city. Everyone secretly calls me the living Yama, all because I was reading financial reports at 3, doing venture capital at 8, and by 12, I had already stripped my father of real power, turning him into nothing more than a figurehead. However, what no one knows is, the reason I've been grinding this hard is because the moment I transmigrated into this world, I got bound to a true versus fake young master counterattack system. The system told me that I am the fake young master who took the real one's place. On my 18th birthday, the real young master, who has suffered endlessly at the bottom of society, will be brought back. He will take revenge on me, frame me, and eventually make everyone abandon me, leaving me to die in the street on a rainy night, my corpse lying cold and alone. So, I spent over a decade laying out my plans, calculating every step with precision, until I secured a trump card powerful enough to destroy half of a city's economy. After accomplishing all this, I sat back, steady and unshaken, coldly waiting for the arrival of my destined rival. As long as that so-called real young master dares to show even the slightest hint of hostility, I'll make him understand immediately what a brutal lesson from society really feels like. However, on my 18th birthday, my father, the one I had long reduced to a figurehead, returned from outside with reddened eyes, leading in a fragile young girl who was sobbing softly. What the hell? What do you mean the system bound incorrectly? What do you mean this is actually a true versus fake heiress story? System, get out here. Damn it, this stupid system actually ran away. Chapter 1. My name is George Wang. I just turned 18 this year, standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window on the second floor of the Wang family's old residence. I held a champagne glass between my fingertips. Parenthetically speaking, it was actually filled with cola. End of parenthesis. As I looked down from above at the grand birthday banquet taking place on the manor lawn, below, the air was thick with luxury and elegance, well-dressed guests mingling, glasses clinking in constant toasts. The elite of City A, political figures and business tycoons alike, had all gathered here to celebrate the coming-of-age ceremony and academic advancement banquet of the Wang family's third young master. The way they looked at me was filled with awe, flattery, and envy. After all, I am the only male heir of this generation of the Wang family, the undisputed future head of the Wang Corporation in the eyes of outsiders. But inside, I felt nothing. If anything, I almost wanted to laugh, because only I know that all this prosperity is nothing more than an illusion, like a mirage reflected in water. Once the guests leave tonight and the clock strikes midnight, these 18 years of peaceful life will burst like a bubble with a single pop. And all of this is thanks to the system that has been bound to my mind since the moment I was born. The true versus fake young master comeback system. 18 years ago, I transmigrated into this world as a newborn. Before I could even let out my first cry, a cold mechanical voice echoed in my mind, pronouncing my death sentence. Ding. Host identity confirmed. Fake young master of the Wang family. Loading original storyline. Final outcome. At age 18, the true young master is found and brought back. Having suffered greatly at the bottom of society, he develops extreme hatred toward the host, who has enjoyed wealth and privilege. After returning, he will carry out a series of revenge schemes, framing feigned ignorance, secret sabotage, and sowing discord within the family. Ultimately, the host will be completely abandoned by the Wang family, cast out, and on a rainy night, run over by a car hired by the true young master. From the day I was still drinking milk, I knew my life had entered an 18-year countdown. No one can calmly live as a rich second-generation heir after knowing they're destined to be run over and killed. I don't believe in fate. I only believe in power and money in my own hands. Since the system says I'm just a disposable fake young master destined to be eliminated, then before the real one returns, I'll turn this family into my fortress. And so, I began an 18-year-long plan. While other children were learning how to walk, I was secretly observing the industrial structure of the Wang family. When others were in elementary school, I used memories from my previous life to direct trusted aides to register offshore companies abroad, precisely catching every wave of the internet boom and new energy industry, completing my initial capital accumulation. What? You're wondering how I managed all that at such a young age, with so many limitations? Of course, the system. What kind of transmigrator doesn't use their system? That would be a wasted transmigration. In short, as I grew older, I displayed astonishing business talent. At 12, I proposed a comprehensive transformation plan for the Wang family's department store business. Parenthetically speaking, it was essentially e-commerce that didn't exist in this world. End of parenthesis, which multiplied the profits several times. At 15, I led the Wang Group's acquisition of a game company on the brink of bankruptcy, and now that company's market value has exceeded 100 billion, parenthetically speaking, you know exactly which game I copied. End of parenthesis. Everyone in the Wang family, including my biological father Paul, held me in the highest regard. They thought my efforts were to secure my position as heir, to bring glory to the Wang family. Only I knew the truth. I was building defensive fortifications. In this circle, bloodline determines everything. Even after being raised for 18 years, once it's discovered that I'm not biologically related, Paul would never allow the family empire to fall into the hands of an outsider. So I couldn't be the one standing in the spotlight, drawing all the attention. Instead, I set my sights on my older sister, Alicia. She is 8 years older than me, gentle, intelligent, the very image of a refined southern beauty. But more importantly, she's a hopeless brother complex. Ever since we were young, as long as I frowned even slightly, she would go to the ends of the earth to bring me whatever I wanted, even if it meant plucking the moon from the sky. Chapter 2. She always felt sorry that I had matured too early, sorry that I had worn myself out for the sake of the group. She often said it was her failure as an older sister that had robbed me of my childhood. 9 years ago, I began operating behind the scenes, step by step pushing my eldest sister into the position of general manager of the Wang Corporation. I told her, Alicia, I don't like standing in the spotlight. I just want to be a quiet investor. The Wang family needs a steady leader. You're the most suitable. I'll always be behind you. She was deeply moved and willingly stood at the front, taking control of the situation for me, charging into battles on my behalf. In the eyes of others, she was a decisive, iron-willed female CEO. But in reality, every piece of core data she held, every major project she signed, my shadow was behind it all. Through her, like slowly boiling a frog in warm water, I gradually hollowed out Paul's real power within the group. Now, in the Wang Corporation, more than half of the board members are my people. The heads of core departments are confidants I secretly cultivated. Every flow of capital is under my surveillance. Although Paul still sits in the chairman's seat, the resources he can mobilize aren't even comparable to those of Alicia's secretary. Of course, my dear father enjoys the leisure. Back then, he didn't know I was a fake young master, nor that I was methodically seizing power. And it wasn't just her, each of my other sisters had been arranged accordingly. My second sister, Willow Wang, is 3 years older than me. She's a cold, aloof beauty, quiet, with a permanently expressionless face. According to the system's original storyline, her personality makes her especially easy for the true young master to manipulate. Honestly, I have no idea how someone who looks that cold all the time could even be manipulated. But since the system said so, I took it at face value. A higher dimensional construct like that shouldn't be wrong, right? So I used my resources to quietly support her in pursuing her passion for art, keeping her away from the center of corporate power struggles and minimizing her chances of coming into contact with the true young master in the future. My fourth sister, Lara, is 15 this year. She's quiet and gentle, somewhat like Alicia, just a gossip-loving teenage girl. Too young to be a concern, just give her enough allowance and that's enough. Today, I turned 18. From the group's top-level decision-making down to the security system of the old mansion, everything in the Wang family is under my absolute control. My defensive towers are fully stacked. I hold a winning hand. As long as that true young master dares to come back, if he even shows the slightest sign of revenge, I'll teach him what it means to be crushed by reality, what it means to be thrown out with nothing, what it means to be erased without a trace. I've imagined countless scenarios of his return. Maybe he's a timid poor boy, maybe a resentful hothead, or perhaps a two-faced actor, innocent in public, scheming in private. No matter which one, I am fully prepared. George, why are you hiding here all alone? Alicia's gentle voice interrupted my thoughts. She walked over in a pale moonlit evening gown, holding 2 glasses of juice. There was a hint of fatigue between her brows, but when she looked at me, her eyes were full of affection. She said, tired. Those old guys were too clingy. I already dealt with them for you. Don't drink too much soda. It's not good for your health. I took the juice and gave her a perfectly harmless smile. Thanks, Alicia. I'm fine. I just wanted a moment of quiet. You've always been too heavy-hearted since you were little. Alicia sighed, reaching out to straighten my tie. Today is your 18th birthday. After today, you're an adult. Promise me, don't push yourself so hard anymore. Whatever happens, your sister will handle it. Looking into her sincere eyes, something inside me stirred slightly. Sis, I'm sorry. I put you at the front so you could be my shield. If one day you find out I'm not your real brother, will you still treat me this well? I suppressed that trace of guilt and nodded with a smile. All right, I'll listen to you. The banquet lasted until late into the night. When the last guest's car left the estate, the Wang family's old mansion, lively all day, finally fell silent. Paul sat at the head seat in the living room, his face flushed, clearly in a great mood today. Alicia, Willow, and Lara sat on either side. I sat down as well, lifting the cup of hot tea Alicia had just made for me, gently blowing on it. I knew the real show was about to begin. According to the original storyline, in 5 minutes, Paul would walk in with a travel-worn young man and drop a bombshell that would shake the entire family. I set the teacup down and, under the guise of adjusting my sleeve, quietly pressed a button on a miniature remote in my pocket. The hidden guards outside the mansion had already entered level 1 alert at my command. Even Paul's biological son could be restrained in an instant. Cough. Paul cleared his throat. The smile on his face faded slightly, replaced with seriousness and a hint of unease. He said, "Since everyone is here, I have something very important to announce." Chapter 3. Here it comes. My body leaned forward slightly, muscles tensed, my gaze sharp as I fixed my eyes on the entrance. "True young master, let me see what kind of monster you really are." Footsteps echoed from the foyer. Paul stood up and hurried over, grabbing someone by the hand and leading them into the center of the living room. "This child is called Maria Lu." Paul's voice was slightly choked. His eyes were red as he looked at her. "Maria, come, greet them. Greet them." Greet who? For 18 years, I had rehearsed in my mind how to overwhelm the true young master with sheer dominance. I had even prepared the lines. And yet, the moment I clearly saw the person Paul had brought back, every logical circuit in my brain instantly short-circuited. I froze on the sofa. Maria. She wore a washed-out white shirt, faded jeans, and canvas shoes still stained with dried mud. Her frame was slender, her head lowered, her posture uneasy and restrained. Long hair, an oval face, delicate features tinged with a hint of stubbornness. But when she saw the luxurious surroundings and our well-dressed presence, a flash of amazement flickered through her eyes, only to be quickly replaced by deep inferiority and a well-hidden resentment, as if the world somehow owed her something. The resentment made sense. The life at the bottom made sense. The unease and inferiority made sense. But the problem was, why the hell is this a girl? Where is my true young master, the scheming, ruthless guy who was supposed to hire someone to run me over? The one I had to undermine my own father to prepare for. Why is it a girl? Dad, who is this? Lara asked curiously. Alicia frowned, instinctively sensing something unusual, something dangerous. Meanwhile, Willow remained as cold and indifferent as ever, as if none of this concerned her. Paul took a deep breath, looking at all of us as his voice trembled. Willow, Alicia, George, Lara. Maria, she is the real child of the Wang family. Willow, 21 years ago at the hospital. You and Maria were switched at birth. Boom. It felt like a bolt of divine lightning struck straight through my skull, leaving me completely stunned, crispy on the outside, shattered on the inside. Willow was the one switched. That cold, quiet, uncompetitive second sister, she was the imposter who had taken someone else's place. And this Maria, the seemingly innocent, fragile, White Lotus-type girl, was the genuine second daughter of the Wang family. Then what am I? From the moment I was still drinking milk, I started planning. I worked tirelessly, schemed relentlessly, stopped at nothing. I hollowed out my own father's power, pushed my eldest sister into becoming CEO, spent 18 years preparing for a life and death battle, and in the end, my enemy never even existed. The true young master from the original storyline was completely wrong from the very beginning. Chapter 4. System. Damn you. System, get the hell out here. What the hell is going on? I frantically called out to it in my mind. Just as my mentality completely collapsed, when I felt like coughing up 3 liters of blood on the spot, the system, which usually played dead and slacked off, finally stopped pretending. It said, "What the hell? That's not right. Host, you're supposed to be the fake young master. What's going on? Who are you asking?" "I'm asking you." It replied. "I don't know either. I'm a male protagonist system. I was literally preparing to guide you on a cultivation path." Cultivation? Wait, tell me more about that. No. Hold on. Systems are divided this specifically. There are even male and female categories. It continued. System self-check in progress. Re-verifying original storyline, BZZZ. Due to cross-dimensional interference during binding 18 years ago, a logical error occurred in the system's underlying code. Identity re-verification. George. DNA match rate 99%. Confirmation complete. You are the biological son of Paul and his late wife, the legitimate true young master of the Wang family. Original plot target, the revenge arc of the true young master, driven by resentment after being switched at birth, does not exist. Due to system error causing gender deviation, correction applied, the true daughter Maria corresponds to second Miss Willow, not the host. This system is designed for the true versus fake young master comeback storyline. Since the host is already the true young master and has achieved the ultimate objective of seizing full control of the family, this system is no longer necessary. System unbinding. Wishing the host a pleasant life. Goodbye. No, farewell forever. The static in my mind disappeared. The system that had screwed me over for 18 years vanished just as abruptly as it had appeared, leaving without taking anything with it. It ran, and all it left behind was me, sitting on a luxurious sofa, watching Paul and Maria crying together. Watching my eldest sister frozen in shock. Watching Willow still as cold and detached as ever. Me, George, the real young master of the Wang family, the actual controller of the Wang Corporation. For 18 years, I had been fighting a battle of wits and strategy, with thin air. I even went so far as to hollow out my own father's power. What the hell kind of situation is this? Chapter 5. Ever since that idiot system ran off early that day, I've had insomnia for 3 nights straight. The moment I close my eyes, I see my hollowed-out father smiling at me. I see my eldest sister, whom I forced into becoming a ruthless businesswoman, still swallowing the empty promises I fed her. And I can still hear that system's perfectly enunciated line echoing in my head. I'm a male protagonist system. My mentality has completely collapsed. To figure out just what kind of hellish opening this is, I mobilized my top-tier intelligence network, the one originally meant to guard against the true young master and corporate spies, to investigate a 21-year-old girl. In less than half a day, Maria's entire life, from her childhood to even her 3rd grade exam scores, to which shady factory she had worked in, was laid out on my desk. Looking at that thick stack of documents, I fell into deep thought. The system might be an idiot, but the general outline of the plot hadn't completely fallen apart. Maria's life trajectory was almost a perfect match for the true young master who suffered at the bottom end, developed extreme resentment toward wealth and privilege that the system described, everything lined up except for the gender. Maria's adoptive parents, who were actually Willow's biological parents, were an absolutely terrible, son-preferring couple. From a young age, Maria never had enough to eat or wear. She had to take on all the housework and even drop out of school to work and support her younger brother. Any slight resistance would be met with beatings or verbal abuse. After struggling in that swamp-like, lightless environment for 21 years, imagine suddenly being told one day, you are actually the daughter of the richest family. You were supposed to live in a mansion, drive luxury cars, and grow up pampered and adored. All the suffering you endured should have belonged to someone else. If it were me, I'd hate it too. If this were a web novel, this would be the perfect opening for a dark, revenge-driven female protagonist. Fortunately, although the Wang family are capitalists, we're not some cold-blooded, inhuman clan. My father Paul, after years of navigating the business world, handled the situation decisively. He paid a large sum of money to sign a severance agreement with those parasitic adoptive parents, cutting all ties. Then he brought Maria Lu back to the Wang family and restored her surname, so now she should be called Maria Wang. But Maria had already become too ingrained. Even she was used to it and didn't want to change it. As for my fake second sister, Willow, both my father and eldest sister made their stance clear. After more than 20 years of raising her, the bond is real, even without blood ties. The Wang family is wealthy enough, we can afford to keep her. She remains the second young lady of the Wang family. Willow's own reaction, however, was even more extreme. On the day she found out she wasn't the real daughter, she simply responded with a cold "oh," and calmly said, "If I need to move out, please give me 3 days' notice so I can pack my painting tools." And then she went straight back to her studio to continue painting, as if an earthquake had shaken only the rest of us, while she only cared whether her paint had dried. Her personality and her hobby are strangely mismatched. Painting doesn't seem like something that belongs to someone so cold. Whatever. Now that the family's internal situation has stabilized, I've finally figured something out. I'm the biological son. I don't need to guard against anyone stealing my inheritance, because this inheritance is already mine. I don't need to scheme anymore. Don't need to study overseas mergers or track the Nasdaq index. I'm done. I'm going to slack off. I'm going to replace the champagne in my glass with actual ice-cold soda. I'm going to play games. So, without hesitation, I called my eldest sister Alicia. Sis, I've thought it through. I'm only 18. Life should have more possibilities. Lying on my bed, my tone deep and serious, I said. For the next 6 months, all meetings, project plans, and that upcoming South City new energy bidding project, leave everything to you. I'm taking a break. Chapter 6. On the other end of the phone, Alicia fell silent for a full 30 seconds. I knew she wouldn't scold me for lacking ambition, she would just assume I was taking her advice to rest. But her reaction was not what I expected at all. Her voice dropped low, carrying a kind of strategic excitement, as she said, "George, did you notice something? Are those old guys in the company trying to pull something while the family's in chaos, messing with the South City project? You're retreating to advance, aren't you? Trying to lure them out and wipe them all out in one move?" I was speechless. Seriously, sis, if you don't go write a thriller novel, it's a waste of talent. A fake daughter isn't the same as a fake son. As long as I, the one in power, am fine, the family could be a complete mess and it wouldn't affect the corporation at all. I said, "Sis, I really just want to play games," she replied. "I understand. Hiding in plain sight, pretending to be weak, Don't worry, leave everything to your big sister. You just keep up the act these next few months. I'll handle the storm outside for you. Click. The call ended. I stared at my phone screen and rubbed my temples in exhaustion. Something's not right. My sister's personality shouldn't be this unhinged. Where did my gentle, refined sister go? Character collapse. Whatever. Let the world burn. Thankfully, I've already trained her well. Her methods are sharp enough now for her to stand on her own. As for whatever wild theory she comes up with, she can believe whatever she wants. I thought this meant I could finally start living the carefree rich second-generation life I had been denied for 18 years. But I quickly realized, things are never that simple. Maria's revenge had begun. Although, thanks to the system's blunder, her target shifted from me to Willow. As someone living under the same roof, and an unwilling spectator, I still got dragged into this low-level family drama. It was the 5th day after Maria returned. At dinner time, the whole family sat around the long French dining table. Oh, right, Alicia wasn't there. She was busy being the company's top-tier corporate workhorse in my place. The household staff had already prepared a lavish dinner, but Maria insisted on cooking personally. She said she wanted to make her specialty, braised pork rib soup, as a way to thank her parents for giving her life. The moment she walked out carrying that big bowl of steaming soup, I immediately sensed something was off. She was wearing an oversized, worn-out t-shirt, the sleeves already frayed. Despite the fact that Father and Alicia had filled her wardrobe with the latest luxury collections, she deliberately dressed like this, looking like some pitiful girl who had just escaped a refugee camp. As Maria approached Willow with the soup, she suddenly, accidentally, tripped. Ah! She cried out as the bowl of scalding soup tipped straight toward Willow. Willow reacted instantly, leaning back sharply to avoid the direct splash, but some of the soup still splattered onto her silk dress. Crash! The porcelain bowl shattered on the floor. Before Willow could even speak, Maria dropped to her knees with a thud right into the mess of soup and broken shards. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, sister. I didn't mean to. Her eyes turned red instantly, tears falling like beads from a broken string. Ignoring the sharp fragments on the ground, she reached out to wipe the soup from Willow's dress. Her hand immediately reddened from the heat. I know I'm clumsy. I can't do anything right. I made you upset, sister. Please don't be angry with me. You can hit me or scold me if you want. Just, please don't send me away. Maria cried so delicately, her thin shoulders trembling, looking utterly pitiful, like Willow had just subjected her to some medieval torture. The air at the dining table froze instantly. Lara was so startled she dropped her chopsticks. Paul shot to his feet, his face full of concern, and I sat beside the head seat, still holding a braised shrimp in my chopsticks, watching Maria's flawlessly executed pretentious coquette act unfold like flowing water. I almost couldn't stop myself from applauding. Chapter 7. What a level. Playing weak to win sympathy. Striking first to seize the initiative, feigning vulnerability, and at the same time pinning the label of malicious fake heiress who can't tolerate the real one onto Willow. Not only is she the real heiress, she's also a future award-winning actress. Maria, what are you doing? As expected, my father, Paul, was the first to lose his composure. After all, he's soft-hearted, and toward this biological daughter who had suffered outside for 21 years, he carried a strong sense of guilt and pity. He pushed his chair back and rushed over, lifting Maria from the floor. Your hand is red from the burn, and it's cut too. Quick, the first aid kit. My father trembled with worry. Then he glanced at my second sister, who was still standing there with a cold expression, and frowned slightly. He said, Willow, Maria has just come back. She's not used to life here yet. He didn't finish his sentence, but the meaning was obvious. Be more tolerant. Don't make that face. I lowered my head and sighed. Could it be that there's some kind of intelligence-reducing aura around the protagonist? My father's reaction was already so ridiculous that I didn't even feel like looking at him. My second sister lowered her gaze to her ruined high-end silk dress, then looked at Maria, who was sobbing uncontrollably. Her already cold face turned even colder. She opened her mouth, as if wanting to explain, but with her personality, one that couldn't squeeze out a word even under pressure, after great effort she only managed to say, I didn't touch her. I know. Sister didn't touch me, it was me. I couldn't keep my balance. Maria, sobbing, clutched tightly at my father's sleeve, trembling from head to toe. Dad, don't blame my sister. I'm just too clumsy. I can't even hold a bowl of soup properly. It was the same at home before. I always made my parents angry and they would beat me. I'm already used to it. What a move. That line went straight for the kill. Not only did it reinforce her victim image, it also trampled over Willow, and even stirred up my father's anger toward her adoptive parents. She successfully turned a simple accident into a conflict of class and family abuse. My younger sister, Lara, was so frightened she looked like a quail shrinking into her chair, not even daring to breathe. I calmly finished peeling the last shrimp and sauce from my chopsticks, dipped it lightly in vinegar, and brought it to my mouth with elegance. Chew, swallow. Then I picked up a wet wipe and began cleaning my fingers one by one. To be honest, this level of family scheming is far too low. So low that for someone like me, who has spent 18 years battling old foxes in the boardroom, playing with acquisitions, short selling, and complex strategies, it evokes a deep sense of loneliness. At a time like this, I could really use some veteran singer to dedicate me a song. I sighed, tossed the wipe onto the table, and finally spoke. Butler. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried the unquestionable authority of someone used to giving orders within a corporate empire. Yes. Third young master, the butler, who had been shrinking in a corner, immediately stepped forward and bowed slightly. I said, call someone to clean this up. Do I really have to say it myself? Yes. Third young master. The butler nodded and hurried off to call someone to deal with the mess Maria had made. I don't know whether this so-called intelligence-reducing aura really exists, but even something this simple had to be personally ordered by me. Then I looked at Maria and spoke calmly. First, the hand-woven wool carpet in this dining room was air-shipped from Italy last month. It has no irregularities, no raised seams, no wrinkles, so the probability of tripping on a flat surface is extremely low from a physical standpoint, unless there is something wrong with your legs. I leaned back in my chair, my gaze indifferent as it rested on her. Maria's crying stopped abruptly. She looked at me in shock. I ignored her and continued. Second, based on the parabolic trajectory just now, if Maria had accidentally stumbled forward, the soup should have spilled onto her own chest or onto the floor in front of her. However, the liquid was projected at an extremely precise angle, forming a 60-degree fan toward Willow's skirt, who was seated half a meter to her left. This indicates that at the moment of falling, her wrist executed a highly precise lateral motion. Chapter 8. Dad froze. He said, George, what do you mean? This was definitely some kind of brain-nerfing halo effect. I said, what I mean is, unless you trained as an acrobat, then this was deliberate. I stood up and walked over to them. I was only 18, but the aura of someone used to being in charge meant that even standing there casually, I carried an overwhelming sense of pressure. Maria's face instantly turned pale. She bit her lower lip, tears welling up in her eyes. Third brother, why would you say that about me? I was really just. Stop. I raised a hand, cutting off her little pre-performance routine. I said, Third, the Wang family has its rules. There are over a dozen house staff here with professional chef and nutritionist certifications. There's no need for members of the family to cook personally. Dressed like that, going into the kitchen does nothing except add psychological pressure on them. I lowered my head, looking at her reddened, scalded hands. My tone was calm, as if I were discussing the weather. I said, you've suffered for 21 years. Dad feels sorry for you, and the Wang family will make it up to you. That's all fair. But the way to compensate you is to let you study, broaden your horizons, and enjoy the life you deserve, not to bring you back into this house so you can keep using those bottom-tier survival tricks you learned, scheming for favor, playing weak, stirring up petty domestic drama. Fair is fair, by blood. You are my second sister in this family. As long as you behave yourself, you are the second young lady of the Wang family, and no one will mistreat you. But if you insist on stepping on others to climb up. I looked into Maria's suddenly shrinking eyes and smiled faintly. I said, I'm someone who hates trouble when necessary. I prefer solving problems at the source, once and for all. The dining room fell into a deathly silence. Fourth sister Lara's gaze at me had already shifted from shock to admiration. Second sister Willow said nothing, but the tight frown on her face had clearly relaxed. Dad, Paul, opened his mouth, seemingly wanting to defend his biological daughter, but remembering how his son, was usually the one calling the shots both at home and in the company. He still didn't say a word. As for Maria, she bit her lip hard. This time, the tears really fell, not an act to gain sympathy, but out of fear. She probably never dreamed that the little schemes she was so proud of wouldn't even amount to anything in front of me, not even worth a ripple. I turned around, hands in my pockets, and lazily walked upstairs. I said, by the way, tell the staff to roast some lamb ribs and bring them to my room. I was too busy watching the show just now. I didn't get full. Chapter 9. According to the usual tropes of wealthy family novels, the sons are meant to inherit the business and expand the empire, while the daughters are used for political marriages to consolidate family interests. The Wang family used to follow that same outdated, rotten playbook. But after I took full control, the very first thing I did was toss all those ridiculous marriage alliance plans straight out of the old man Wang's head. What a joke. I busted my ass grinding for 18 years. Pushing the Wang group to a level that all the elite families in City A combined couldn't even reach, and we still need to trade off our sisters for resources. Now it's other people begging the Wang family for scraps. The Wang family has no need for marriage alliances. So, Eldest sister doesn't need to marry for business, she can focus on being the decisive, iron-willed CEO she is. 15-year-old fourth sister doesn't have to be tied down with some childhood engagement either. As for my fake second sister, Willow, she did have a marriage arrangement before. Her match was the eldest son of the Ito family in City A, Makoto Ito. After I rose to power, I simply said, "Who the hell does the Ito family think they are, trying to marry up to us?" and unilaterally tore up the engagement. And ironically, Makoto, who had been somewhat resistant to arranged marriages, ended up completely hooked after seeing Willow's cold, iceberg-like dominant elegance. Add in the frustration of being rejected, and he awakened some strange trait, turning into a hardcore simp. For the past few years, he's been relentlessly chasing her. September arrived, and City A University welcomed the new semester. As one of the nation's top institutions, a university has long been on good terms with the Wang Group, which donates tens of millions every year in education funds. I, the true young master of the Wang family, 18 years old, finally stepped onto a university campus as I had always wanted. I thought I was about to begin my dream retirement life, coasting through classes, sleeping during lectures, and gaming after school. But I forgot, Maria goes to this school too. Dad paid to get Maria into a university. Like me, she's a freshman, and Willow, coincidentally, is a senior in the fine arts department. Ever since the day in the old mansion's dining room, when I absolutely crushed her in a one-sided, overwhelming takedown, Maria had been quiet at home, like she didn't even exist. Whenever she saw me, she'd avoid me. I thought she'd had an epiphany, decided to turn over a new leaf, and live as a low-key rich girl. Clearly, I underestimated the obsession of a classic manipulative White Lotus. She probably realized she couldn't provoke me, the final boss, so she wisely shifted the battlefield. She moved all her scheming to the university and aimed all her attention at Willow, the one she blamed for stealing 21 years of her life. To be fair, Maria is genuinely pretty. That frail figure from years of malnutrition, paired with a delicate, innocent face that looks like it would collapse with the slightest breeze, basically the embodiment of a first love archetype, has nuclear-level appeal to inexperienced college boys overflowing with a savior complex. Less than a week into the semester, Maria already had a crowd of eager senior guys and male classmates orbiting around her, ready to serve, and among them, she quietly began to deploy her signature manipulative coquette tactics. That afternoon, at a high-end cafe in the South District of a university, I was sitting in a corner booth, wearing headphones, staring at my phone, going all out in a ranked match. "Young master, what would you like to drink? We just got some new geisha coffee beans today." The cafe owner, also a minor rich kid I had casually invested in before, came over, fawning. "Cola, cold." I didn't even look up, my fingers flying across the screen. At that moment, the wind chimes at the cafe entrance rang. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw two people walk in. One was a guy in limited edition sneakers, his hair perfectly styled, none other than Willow's former arranged fiancé and current #1 simp, Makoto Ito, and following behind him, head lowered, eyes slightly red, tightly clutching a cheap milk tea, was none other than my biological second sister, Maria. This matchmaking system is seriously messed up. Chapter 10. I cursed the game under my breath, flipped my phone face down on the table, and pulled off one earbud, because I smelled it, a strong, familiar scent of deep scheming. "Senior Ito, thank you for buying me a drink." Maria's voice was as thin as a thread, carrying 3 parts grievance and 7 parts forced resilience. She said, "Actually, you don't have to worry about me. I'm used to it. Back when I lived in the countryside, I heard things much worse than this." Makoto frowned, his face full of righteous indignation. "Maria, you're just too kind. You're the real heiress of the Wang family. That Willow occupied your place for 21 years, and now she's still taking up resources that should belong to you. Acting all high and mighty at school, who is she trying to impress?" I leaned back in the corner in a tactical retreat. I hadn't been paying attention for just a few days. How did Maria even get connected with Makoto? And from the sound of it, she had already painted herself in front of him as a pitiful victim, brutally suppressed by a fake heiress. "Senior Ito, please don't say that about my sister." Maria quickly waved her hands, tears welling up in her eyes at just the right moment, on the verge of falling, but not quite. She's innocent too. It's just that I'm not good enough. I never learned piano or painting growing up. I don't understand anything. No wonder my sister's friends all look down on me and call me a country bumpkin." She sniffed, forcing a smile as she looked at Makoto. "Actually, I really envy my sister. If we hadn't been switched at birth, maybe I could have met someone as outstanding as you from a young age." Brilliant. That move, retreating to advance, mixed with subtle flirting, was textbook manipulative coquette behavior. Not only did she accuse Willow of letting her friends isolate her at school, She also fed Makoto a huge dose of emotional validation, perfectly satisfying this rich kid's vanity and protective instincts. Sure enough, Makoto's brain instantly went offline, as if he'd been put under a spell. He slammed the table. This is outrageous. Willow being cold is one thing, but I didn't expect her to be this scheming. Don't worry, Maria, there's an art exhibition at the Fine Arts Department today. I'll go confront her right now. What belongs to you? I'll get it back for you. Fired up by Maria's manipulative sweet talk, Makoto turned and strode toward the Fine Arts building in a rage. Maria stood where she was, watching his retreating figure. The pitiful expression on her face from a moment ago vanished the instant he turned around. The tears disappeared like magic. A cold, hidden, satisfied smile curled at her lips. It was the look of a venomous snake that had clawed its way up from the bottom, finally sinking its fangs into prey. She adjusted the collar of her faded shirt, preparing to follow and enjoy the show. TCH. From the quiet corner of the cafe came a crisp, utterly out-of-place sound, the opening of a soda can. PSSSH. Maria's entire body stiffened. She turned her head mechanically. I sat in the shadow of the booth, leisurely taking a sip of ice-cold cola, letting out a satisfied sigh. Then I lifted my eyes, looking at Maria, who now looked like she'd just seen a ghost, and rubbed my brow. Somewhat tired, I said, Maria, do you think that as long as you stay out of my sight, everyone in this world will just go along with your performance? I tapped the soda can against the table with a dull thud. I said, do you believe that before Makoto even reaches the Fine Arts building, all it takes is one phone call from me, and his father will personally fly over in a helicopter and break his legs? I looked at the so-called true heiress in front of me, whose body had started trembling uncontrollably again, and felt a wave of exhaustion. This generation of villains is really disappointing. All I want is to quietly attend university and play some games. Why is that so hard? I didn't even stand up from the booth. Right in front of Maria, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, found a number labeled Old Man Ito, and casually sent a single question mark. Chapter 11. In less than 30 seconds, Makoto, who had just reached the cafe entrance and was about to stride off heroically to deliver justice at the Fine Arts Department, felt his phone vibrate like crazy in his pocket. Through the glass, I watched him pick up the call. 1 second ago, he still had that over-the-top, heroic chosen one expression like he was about to save the world. The next second, his face turned deathly pale, and his once straight posture bent instantly into a 90-degree bow. I couldn't hear the call, but judging from the way he kept nodding and bowing at thin air, I could practically read his lips. Dad, no, I didn't cause trouble. I really didn't offend young Master Wang. I was wrong. I'll go home right now. After hanging up, Makoto didn't even dare to glance back at Maria. Like a scrawny dog with its tail stepped on, he scrambled out of the campus in a panic, flagged down a taxi, and bolted. This so-called young master didn't even have his own car or driver. I set my phone down, took another sip of my ice-cold cola, and looked at Maria, who was frozen in place, her face paler than paper. I said, "See, I told you." I sighed. "If you insist on playing these childish little games, you're not only wasting my time, you're also wasting the blood pressure medication Makoto's dad needs." Maria completely broke down. If, back at the Wang family mansion, she had still thought I was just bullying her with home field advantage, and today, at school, at a university far from the core power of the Wang family, parenthetically speaking, not truly far, end of parenthesis, I merely used a single punctuation mark to destroy, from afar, the little scheme she had carefully woven all afternoon. This was what you call a dimensionality gap. The way she looked at me had changed, from jealousy and resentment to pure fear, like a mouse facing a cat. Third brother, her voice trembled. Was I really that scary? I waved my hand, as if brushing away an annoying fly. Go back to class. Stop watching those low IQ palace drama shows and memorize more English vocabulary instead. If you fail your CET, for exam, Dad's going to nag me again for not taking good care of you. Maria didn't dare say another harsh word. With tears in her eyes, she fled in embarrassment. From that day on, Maria became completely obedient. Or rather, she entered a dormant phase. She finally realized that as long as George, was still breathing, all those manipulative coquette tricks and pure innocent girl scripts she learned from the bottom of society were nothing but laughable and powerless. For the next 2 months, a university's campus was peaceful. Maria didn't provoke Willow again, nor did she try to latch onto any rich second-generation heirs. She attended classes on time every day, and even, miraculously, borrowed a few books from the library, acting like a reformed, model student. And I finally got the retired college life I had always dreamed of. Eldest sister Alicia dominated the business world, managing the Wang group flawlessly on my behalf. Every day, when she reported to me on WeChat, she even imagined I was orchestrating some grand master plan. The fake second sister studied painting peacefully at the Academy of Fine Arts, occasionally even winning some inexplicable major awards, parenthetically speaking, not because of my influence. End of parenthesis. Fourth sister Lara remained a carefree gossip enthusiast. As for me, I slept until I woke up naturally, occasionally attended a few interesting lectures, and spent the rest of my time gaming in the esports club, or racing cars on the mountain roads of City A with a few trusted, like-minded troublemaker friends. Everything seemed to be moving in a good direction. Of course, if I actually believed that, I'd be the real idiot. When a kid goes quiet, you know they're up to something. Chapter 12. As expected, after behaving like a model student at a university for 2 whole months, Maria finally couldn't suppress her urge to stir up trouble any longer. After those painful lessons before, she must have done some serious late-night analysis under her blanket in the dorm, thoroughly reviewing my tactics, and came to one conclusion: in the face of absolute capital and intelligence, confronting me head-on was basically suicide. So, she changed her approach. Since she couldn't overcome me, this immovable mountain named George, she decided to go around me and launch a dimensional attack from the moral and ethical high ground, aiming to drive a wedge between me and my fake second sister, Willow. As long as I started to resent Willow and stopped backing her up, kicking Willow out of the Wang family would be a matter of minutes. The plan was perfect, but her execution, even I, someone who's been playing the role of a domineering CEO since birth, was genuinely impressed, in a bad way. The Wang family's outer garments are all handled by the staff. There's a dedicated laundry room on the first floor, but personal underwear is washed in the private bathroom washing machines inside our own bedrooms. We handle those ourselves. At first, I just noticed that occasionally, one pair of my underwear, hung out to dry on the private balcony on the 3rd floor, would mysteriously disappear. At first, I thought the wind had blown it away. After all, City A had been pretty windy lately, but recently, my washing speed couldn't keep up with the rate of theft. One time, even a pair I hadn't washed yet went missing. Then I personally saw it on the surveillance footage. Maria, sneaking around like a guilty little mole, slipped into my room while the staff weren't paying attention. When she came out, she was holding a pair of my unwashed, limited edition Calvin Klein boxers. At that moment, sitting in the surveillance room, I was completely stunned. Sure, there's no surveillance inside bedrooms, but with so many staff in the Wang household, of course there are cameras in the hallways. No, seriously, what the hell are you trying to do? You're the real heiress, not some creepy pervert. Why are you stealing my underwear? What? Are you planning to use it for some kind of ritual? Isn't this the kind of plot that usually belongs to those true versus fake young master stories? So now, in a true versus fake heiress scenario, she's starting rumors using stolen underwear. That's surprisingly avant-garde. I suppressed the urge to expose her on the spot, because I was genuinely curious, what kind of stunt was she going to pull with that pair of underwear? I've seen fake heirs steal a sister's personal clothing to slander someone before, but a true heiress stealing her younger brother's underwear to frame someone, that was a first. It wasn't until the weekend afternoon that Dad was rarely home resting, parenthetically speaking, because I had slacked off, end of parenthesis, and fourth sister was also in the living room watching TV, that Maria's script finally began. She said, "Dad, I can't find something. I think I left it in second sister's room. Could you come with me to look for it?" Maria's eyes were red, looking like she was about to cry, yet too afraid to face Willow alone, a perfectly pitiful act. Dad couldn't stand seeing her like that. He immediately put down the newspaper. "Why are you crying over something so small? Come on, I'll go with you." At that moment, I was sitting on the sofa playing a ranked match. Hearing that, I quietly turned off my phone screen. Here it comes. The manipulative coquette has finally leveled up. Chapter 13. A whole group of us marched into Willow's room. She was wearing headphones, painting at her easel. When she saw us come in, she only raised an eyebrow slightly, took off her headphones, and said nothing. "Sister, sorry to bother you. The diamond necklace I lent you the other day, where did you put it? I have a class gathering tomorrow and wanted to wear it," Maria asked cautiously. Willow frowned. "I never borrowed your necklace. Sister, did you forget? It's right under your pillow." As she spoke, Maria quickly walked to the bed. As if to prove her innocence, she lifted Willow's pillow in one swift motion. The next second, Maria let out an exaggerated scream. As if she had seen a ghost, she stumbled back 2 steps, covering her mouth, her face flushed red. On the spotless white bedsheet, a black pair of men's boxers lay there quietly, yet glaringly out of place. The iconic CK logo on the waistband was especially eye-catching under the afternoon sunlight. Maria gasped in shock. "Sister, why, you may not be Dad's biological daughter, but third brother grew up with you. He's no different from your real brother. How could you do something so shameless?" She pointed accusingly, her voice filled with grief and outrage. tears coming instantly. No wonder you've always refused to move out, so you actually have those kinds of thoughts about third brother, you're terrifying. Her voice trembled slightly with agitation. She was completely immersed in the joy of finally grasping Willow's fatal weakness, practically radiating the triumph of someone who had just secured first blood and staged a comeback. She had probably already played out the next scene in her mind, Dad flying into a rage, me feeling disgusted, Willow unable to defend herself, and finally being thrown out of the Wang family. However, 10 seconds passed. The room was dead silent. There was no expected outburst, no shouting, because everyone present reacted in a way that was extremely strange. As the primary victim of this setup, Willow, the fake second sister, she didn't really defend herself. She didn't coldly dismiss it as ridiculous, nor did she angrily accuse Maria of framing her. She simply stood quietly by the easel. First, she looked at the boxers on the bed with an extremely complicated expression. Then, she slowly raised her eyes and looked at me. My hand had already been in my pocket, gripping my phone, the one containing the high-definition footage of Maria sneaking around like a mole. I was just about to take it out and utterly crush her with evidence, but the moment our eyes met, my hand froze, because at the instant our gazes locked, Willow suddenly looked away as if she had been burned, her reaction almost guilty, that usually cool and pale face, along with the tips of her ears, even flushed with a suspicious shade of red. What the hell? My heart skipped a beat, and my brain instantly short-circuited. Something's wrong. This is seriously wrong. Maria was the one who stole the underwear, so why are you acting guilty? And that evasive look, like someone whose secret feelings had just been exposed, what is that supposed to mean? Could it be? Could it be? Chapter 14. I turned to look at Dad. Dad. Paul, his eyes were wide like copper bells, but he didn't get angry. Those seasoned, business-hardened eyes of his kept flicking between Willow and me. There was no anger in his gaze, only shock, and something difficult to describe. As for fourth sister Lara, she had both hands clamped over her mouth, her eyes wide and round, her face full of disbelief. Clearly, her worldview had just taken a hit from this bizarre scene, but with her simple mind, she probably hadn't grasped the deeper implications at all. Meanwhile, Maria, seeing how heavy and silent the atmosphere had become, thought her scheme had finally succeeded. She assumed everyone was too disgusted by Willow's perverted behavior to even speak. The corners of her lips were already twitching upward uncontrollably, and she had to bite her lower lip to suppress her excitement, secretly reveling as she waited for the final judgment. But at this moment, I had no mood whatsoever to deal with Maria. The phone in my pocket felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds, and my mind was filled with that guilty, evasive look Willow had just given me. Over the past 18 years, when eldest sister forced me to drink herbal medicine, it was Willow who handed me peppermint candy afterward. When I cancelled her engagement with the Ito family, it was her shoulders that subtly relaxed. The mansion was so large, yet she had chosen to set up her art studio right next to my study. Countless moments I had once dismissed as nothing more than close sibling affection were now replaying in my mind like a slideshow. Wait. Willow, with those serious brows and big innocent eyes, have a brother complex too. Cough, cough. Seeing that no one was speaking, Dad Paul was the first to snap out of it. He cleared his throat and hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Well, the weather's nice today, Maria. There must be some misunderstanding here. It's not appropriate for us men to linger in a girl's room. As he spoke, he pushed my shoulder and ushered me toward the door, while also waving at Maria and Lara. All right. Everyone go back to your rooms. Don't disturb Willow while she's painting. We'll talk about this later. In an extremely stiff and clumsy way, Dad forcibly dispersed everyone. With a bang, second sister's bedroom door was shut. For the rest of the day, the atmosphere in the Wang family villa was unbearably tense. Dad locked himself in the study, seemingly plotting something unknown. Second sister kept her door tightly closed, and I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, questioning my entire life. In the entire Wang household, only Maria remained in high spirits, humming happily in her room, secretly savoring what she believed to be her hard-earned phase victory. Chapter 15. Ever since the underwear incident, the Wang family mansion entered a period of eerie peace. Maria had been in visibly good spirits these past few days. She stopped stirring up trouble, stopped playing the victim, and even managed to eat 2 extra bowls of rice at the dinner table every day. She had probably convinced herself of one thing: in that bedroom, bound by moral and ethical norms. Although Dad had forcibly interrupted the performance, the seed of suspicion had already been planted. A fake heiress developing feelings for the true young master. This was a major taboo in wealthy families. All she needed to do now was wait patiently for the bomb to detonate on its own. When it did, the decree to expel Willow from the Wang family would naturally follow. Watching her flit around the mansion like a cheerful little sparrow every day, I honestly didn't have the heart to tell her, The bomb had indeed gone off, but what exploded wasn't destruction. It was a sky full of pink cherry blossoms. These days, my mood had been extremely complicated. Compared to my existential crisis, Dad, Comrade Paul, could be said to have seen the light. That old fox, ever since he figured everything out in that bedroom, had been looking at Willow completely differently. Before, he saw her as an adopted daughter. Now, he saw her as the designated safeguard for preventing core Wang Group assets from leaking out. A fake daughter turning into a real daughter-in-law, keeping everything within the family. He was absolutely delighted. So, he began subtly, and not so subtly, testing the waters and playing matchmaker. At the dinner table, Dad deliberately turned Willow's favorite sweet and sour ribs toward me. "George, your second sister has been working hard on her paintings lately. Give her a piece of meat. Let her build up her strength." While watching TV, Dad literally shoved fourth sister Laura aside so that Willow and I had to sit next to each other on the long sofa. My scalp tingled. All I could do was pretend to be deaf and dumb. I had no idea how to deal with this kind of situation. In my previous life, I was a workaholic grinder. In this life, I'm a domineering CEO constantly playing mind games with an old fox. You could throw me into a multi-billion-dollar merger and acquisition, and I wouldn't even blink, but asking me to handle a cold, elegant woman secretly in love with me, that's way beyond the syllabus. I originally planned to just keep playing dead like this, until that weekend night. That night, I got a bit thirsty, and I had already finished all the cola in my room, so I had no choice but to go downstairs to the kitchen to get some water. But just as I reached the second-floor terrace, I caught a faint scent of red wine. Willow was standing there, wearing a silk nightgown, barefoot on the wool carpet, holding half a glass of red wine, leaning against the railing as she let the night breeze pass. Artists need inspiration. Occasionally drinking a little, that's her source of inspiration. I knew that. Hearing footsteps, she turned around. Under the moonlight, I saw that her usually cool, pale face was now flushed with a noticeable blush. Her eyes, normally calm as still water, now seemed to be veiled with a thin layer of mist. "You're still awake?" I asked dryly, already turning to leave. "George." She stopped me, calling my name. Not third brother. Her voice, softened by alcohol, carried less of its usual coldness and a hint of husky tenderness. I froze. She set down her wine glass and walked toward me. At her height of around 1.7 meters, standing this close, I could even smell the unique scent on her, something that mixed paint and red wine. She said, "You've been avoiding me for a week." She stared straight at me. With the help of alcohol, she finally tore away that cold, distant facade. She said, "I didn't steal the underwear, but I didn't deny it, because I didn't want to." She took a deep breath, as if gathering all her courage. "George, I like you. Not the kind of liking a sister has for a brother, but the kind a woman has for a man." Chapter 16. Holy shit. She went straight for it. If you feel disgusted, or can't accept it, I'll move out of the Wang family tomorrow." Her gaze lowered slightly, fingers gripping the hem of her nightgown so tightly her knuckles turned white. Looking at her trying to stay composed while still looking so fragile, my brain started running at full speed. Honestly, if it were eldest sister Alicia saying something like this to me, I would have jumped off the terrace on the spot and booked a standing ticket to escape the planet overnight. She practically raised me, tutoring my homework, making sure I drank my herbal medicine, treating me like her own son. That would be completely unacceptable. But Willow was different. Because of that ridiculous system setting where she'd supposedly be used by the true young master, I had deliberately kept my distance from her growing up. We were never that close, and with her naturally cold personality, the sibling bond between us was actually pretty thin. Most importantly, I carefully studied her face, delicate features, a cool and elegant beauty, outstanding temperament. This was basically a perfect bullseye hit on my aesthetic preferences across both my lives. Now we didn't share any blood relation, and even the so-called household registration barrier meant nothing to the Wang family. At worst, she'd just move out and return under a different identity. And besides, she had already taken the initiative this far. If I still acted all hesitant and awkward, then I'd really be worse than a eunuch. I said, "Who said I was going to make you leave?" I sighed, took the wine glass from her hand, and casually placed it on the nearby table. "You can't handle alcohol well, drink less." Seeing her stunned expression, I scratched the back of my head awkwardly, lowering my voice. "Well, I've never been in a relationship before, but we can try." Willow suddenly lifted her head. In those shimmering, watery eyes, a light burst forth, the brightest I had ever seen in my life. And just like that, our relationship transitioned, naturally yet somewhat clumsily, from fake siblings to a real couple. The shift didn't feel abrupt. Around others, Willow was still her usual cold self. Only when we were alone would she occasionally reveal that soft, slightly shy side of a girl in love. That stark contrast gave someone like me, single for 18 years straight, a long-lost feeling of what it meant to have one's heart stirred. Of course, paper can't wrap fire, especially not when facing someone like our eldest sister, who had a top-tier little brother radar. Alicia had been staying at a high-end apartment closer to the company for half a month, overseeing a new energy project in the Southern District. Finally, after the project was completed, she gave herself 2 days off and rushed back to the mansion, excited to spend time with her beloved 18-year-old little brother. The moment she pushed open the living room door, she saw Willow and me sitting on the sofa watching a movie. Not just that, Willow's head was resting naturally on my shoulder, and I was feeding her a peeled grape. Thud. The Hermes bag in Alicia's hand, worth hundreds of thousands, fell straight to the ground. I swear, the expression on her face at that moment was like someone who had spent 18 years carefully raising a fresh, tender cabbage, only to see it get snatched up by an even prettier pig right in her own backyard. Her world had collapsed. George. Alicia's voice trembled. Half an hour later, our whole family, except for fourth sister, who was still at school, and Maria, who was taking a nap in her room, gathered in the study. After learning the whole sequence of events, parenthetically speaking, omitting the part about the underwear, since it was too indecent, end of parenthesis, and receiving Dad Paul's strong endorsement of, "This is for the everlasting prosperity of the Wang group," the shock on eldest sister's face finally began to fade. Chapter 17. She looked at me, then at Willow, who was blushing and lowering her head. Although the idea of her younger brother turning into a brother-in-law, or effectively a sibling-in-law, was a bit hard for her to process at first. Once she thought it through, first, the benefits were still staying within the family. Second, her most beloved little brother wouldn't be tricked away by some shady outsider. Third, Willow was someone she had watched grow up. Her character was absolutely trustworthy. All right then. Eldest sister let out a long sigh, walked over, pinched my cheek, then took Willow's hand. She said, "Since you two like each other, how could I, as your big sister, stand in the way? But George, if you ever dare to bully Willow, I'll be the first to come after you." There we go. Everyone's happy. Time to set off fireworks. At this moment, all the core conflicts within the Wang family had been completely resolved. All that remained was one ticking time bomb, still completely in the dark. That evening at dinner, Maria hummed a little tune as she walked downstairs, sat at the table full of anticipation. She glanced around and noticed that eldest sister had returned. On top of that, Dad had even ordered the kitchen to open a bottle of fine wine. The atmosphere seemed unusually grand. Maria's eyes lit up. Here it comes. Eldest sister is finally back. Dad and she must be about to put Willow, the perverted fake heiress, on trial and carry out punishment. Paul said, "I've gathered everyone here today to announce some great news." Dad raised his glass, his face glowing with excitement as he stood up. "George and Willow are officially together. When George graduates from university, we'll hold their wedding." Puffed. The mouthful of soup Maria had just taken went straight spraying out. She shot to her feet because she stood up too quickly. The chair scraped harshly against the floor with a piercing noise. She stared fixedly at Willow, who was holding a glass and clinking it with mine, her eyes practically popping out. What? In Maria's mind, it was as if 10,000 alpacas were stampeding through. Great news. Together. Wedding. She stole underwear, spread scandalous rumors, played the victim, schemed every possible way to drive Willow out of the house. And what was the result? Not only did the Wang family not kick this pervert out, they went along with it and directly upgraded the fake heiress into the real daughter-in-law. And the trigger for all of this was actually her own self-righteous, catching them in the act, performance. At that moment, Maria's world completely collapsed. She now wished she could crawl under the table and retrieve the clown nose she had just dropped. She finally realized that in this family, she wasn't just a clown, she was a top-tier matchmaker. Looking at my half-smiling expression, then at the approving attitude of Dad and eldest sister toward Willow, a deep sense of helplessness and fear surged within her. George, the devil, not only controlled all the money and power of the Wang family, but now Willow had also become the lady boss under his absolute protection. Revenge. With what? What could she even use to fight back? Right now, she was nothing more than a worm with its vital point firmly pinched. Dad asked with concern, "Maria, what's wrong? Did you choke?" No, it's nothing." Maria's legs went weak, and she collapsed back into her chair. She lowered her head, tears welling up in her eyes, yet forced herself to hold them back. From that day on, Maria behaved more obediently than even the servants in this house. Let alone targeting Willow, she would even avoid looking at me, taking detours whenever she saw me. Her greatest wish each day was simply that I wouldn't send her back to the countryside, and that she could quietly get a diploma from a university. The farce had finally come to a complete end. After dinner, Willow and I walked hand in hand along the tree-lined avenue of a city university to digest our meal. The autumn breeze passed through, leaves falling all around. I took a deep breath of the air tinged with the fragrance of osmanthus, then glanced back at the girl beside me. Cool. stunningly beautiful, yet completely obedient to me, my real girlfriend. Looking back on these 18 years, I guarded against the true young master, sidelined my own father, drove eldest sister to madness, parenthetically speaking. She actually enjoyed it quite a bit. End of parenthesis, and built the Wang group into the #1 in a city. I even had the will written in advance. And what was the result? The system turned out to be a brain-dead male-oriented cultivation system. The true young master was actually a pretentious coquette of a younger sister who only knew how to steal underwear. And the fake heiress who was supposed to meet a miserable end in the original story ended up becoming my wife. I spent 18 years outsmarting thin air, only to end up with the miserable fate of gaining both wealth and love, with success in both career and romance. I let out a sigh and tightened my grip on Willow Wang's hand. Strictly speaking, she should be called Willow Lu. This damned life turned out to be pretty good after all. The end, parenthetically speaking, as if. Chapter 18. Willow's POV. My name is Willow Wang, or rather, it should be Willow Lu. In everyone else's eyes, I'm a cold, quiet woman, an aloof beauty who cares about nothing except painting. But only I know that deep inside me, there's a secret, something dark, something that could even be called twisted. I like George, my younger brother. I don't know when this feeling started to change. Maybe it was from when he was little, when he was forced to drink that bowl of pitch-black herbal medicine eldest sister brought him. He would clearly be frowning from the bitterness, yet still pretend to stay composed. At times like that, I would secretly slip a piece of his favorite mint candy into his palm. He would glance at me, quietly eat it, and that small secret shared only between the two of us. I became addicted to it, or maybe it began when I witnessed his terrifying talent in business. While other kids his age were still playing in the mud or getting into fights, he was already in the study, calmly analyzing stacks of English NASDAQ financial reports. He was like a born ruler. In this household, he never needed to raise his voice. Yet step by step, without drawing attention, he took firm control of the Wang group. He wasn't particularly close to me, if anything. He often kept a deliberate distance. And yet, he supported everything I loved without question. The elders in the Wang family thought painting was a useless pursuit. Only he waved his hand and built me the best art studio in City A, pouring money into exhibitions for me. Even after he fully took power, the very first thing he did was unilaterally cancel my business marriage with Makoto. That day, he sat on the sofa and casually said, "Who does the Ito family think they are? The daughters of the Wang family don't need to be married off for alliances." At that moment, looking at his cold yet domineering profile, I felt like my heart had been struck violently by something. It started pounding uncontrollably, but I could only suppress these feelings with everything I had, because I was the second young lady of the Wang family, and he was the third young master. On paper, we were siblings. Every late night, when I sketched his silhouette on canvas, I would despise myself. "Willow, you're disgusting. You're desiring your own brother." I thought I would carry this nauseating secret for the rest of my life, painting alone forever, until that night, when Maria appeared. Father, with reddened eyes, announced that I was not the Wang family's biological daughter. There had been a mix-up at the hospital. George and I had no blood relation. At that moment, eldest sister was shocked, fourth sister stunned, and George looked like he had been struck by lightning. As for me, on the surface, I simply responded with a faint, "Oh," and returned to my studio. But only heaven knows, the moment I closed the studio door, my hand gripping the paintbrush was trembling with excitement. I'm not biologically related. George and I have no blood ties. The moral shackles that had bound me for so many years were shattered completely by Maria's arrival. If I weren't trying to maintain my cold persona, I might have run out and kowtowed to Maria in gratitude. But after the excitement came an even deeper fear. I didn't dare confess. George is too rational, too intelligent. If I spoke recklessly, would he think that all those years of sibling affection were just a disguise? Would he find me terrifying and completely distance himself from me? Chapter 19. I was like a gambler on the edge of a cliff, chips in hand, yet unable to place the bet, until that idiot Maria handed me a perfect opportunity to test things. When Maria stole George's underwear from his balcony to frame me, I wasn't flustered at all. She didn't know, but I did. The hallway surveillance cameras in the house had full coverage with no blind spots. Her actions must have already been recorded. So when she stormed into my room with a crowd, pulled out that pair of men's boxers from under my pillow, and hysterically accused me of being some pervert harboring improper thoughts toward my brother, I wasn't panicked in the slightest. Besides, we weren't even blood related. If George didn't know the truth, if he had really looked at me with disgust, I could have simply pulled up the hallway footage and thrown it in Maria's face, proving my innocence, and gone back to being that untouchable, indifferent, fake second sister. But I chose to gamble. Not only did I not defend myself, I deliberately raised my head and looked at him with a complicated, guilty expression, as if my secret had just been exposed, then quickly looked away. This move is called advancing by retreating. I saw George freeze mid-motion as he was about to take out his phone. In those always calculating eyes of his, I saw shock, confusion, and a storm of thoughts. I knew if he was reaching for his phone, it had to be because he had the surveillance footage. He wanted to clear my name. I could even guess why he had checked the footage, because aside from that pair under my pillow, the others, well, yeah. But he didn't take out the footage to slap Maria in the face. Instead, like a startled rabbit, he fled the moment Dad finished speaking. Watching his retreating back, I couldn't help but let a faint smile curl at my lips. I knew I had already won half the game. Over the next few days, he started avoiding me like crazy. If he wouldn't make a move, then I'd have to use some unconventional methods. While the staff were cleaning, I quietly slipped into his room and emptied out every single can of cola from his mini fridge, not leaving even one. I even took a deep breath on his pillow. Midnight. After gaming, he would definitely get thirsty. He would definitely go downstairs for water. And I, wearing that silk nightgown that best showed off my figure, holding half a glass of red wine, stood on the terrace he had to pass, quietly waiting for my prey. The wine was to steady my nerves, and also to give him a perfect excuse. When he stood stiffly in front of me, trying to escape, I finally used the courage borrowed from alcohol to say the words I had buried in my heart for countless days and nights. George, I like you. Not the kind of liking a sister has for a brother, but the kind a woman has for a man. I didn't call him brother. I called him by his name, parenthetically speaking. A little clever trick. Learn it. End of parenthesis. My palms were soaked with sweat, but he sighed, took away my wine glass, and said, I've never been in a relationship before, but we can try. At that moment, I heard something bloom, flowers blossoming across the frozen wasteland in my heart. What followed felt almost unreal in how smoothly it unfolded. Eldest sister broke down for a while, but eventually accepted me, grudgingly, as the officially promoted sister-in-law. Father was even more delighted, his mind filled with grand visions of a perfectly closed asset loop. And as for the greatest contributor of all, Maria, she completely quieted down. She would probably never understand for the rest of her life why her carefully orchestrated, catching them in the act, drama ended up becoming the catalyst for our engagement. On the tree-lined path of a university, the autumn breeze brushed past. The air carried the faint fragrance of osmanthus. I turned my head and looked at the boy beside me, the one holding my hand, still muttering under his breath about his losing streak in games. Now, he finally belonged entirely to me. I gently tightened my grip on his hand, a tenderness in my eyes that even I hadn't noticed. What's wrong? He noticed my gaze and turned to ask. Nothing. I curved my lips into a smile. My usually cool voice carried a hint of lightness. I just think the weather is really nice today. The end, parenthetically speaking. This time it's really over.